Hi, everybody. Yeah, my name is Yancey. I'm the CEO and a co-founder of Kickstarter. And it's an honor to be here. I've always wanted to come to Sonar and get to speak is amazing. So I want to talk about what Kickstarter is, just some of the basics if you're not familiar, some of the things that have happened through Kickstarter, and then what it is that we do, how we think about what we do. So very simply, Kickstarter is a platform that helps bring creative projects to life. So it's a way for musicians, filmmakers, artists, designers, chefs, technologists, innovators to share ideas with the public and then work with them to actually make them. And it's worked quite well. This is a page we have on our site where we have live statistics of everything that's happened on the platform. But over the past 6 years, it's about $1.8 billion that has gone to artists and creators through Kickstarter. And the biggest categories, the ones with over $150 million going to artists, are games, technology, design, film, and music. So those are the big categories on Kickstarter where you see a lot of action happening. But every one of these categories, including journalism or comics, see millions of dollars going to independent artists and creators. And it's also a global platform. People from all over the world can back a project on Kickstarter. Last year, more than $4 million was pledged by people in Spain to projects on Kickstarter. And then we're adding new places where people can launch projects, including here in Spain just 2 weeks ago. And so far in the first 2 weeks, €250,000 has been pledged to Spanish artists and creators. So it's starting off very well. But it's a global community of people who like independent creations, who support artists and creativity, and that's at the core of what we do. But Kickstarter also uses a unique all-or-nothing funding system to make projects happen. So when you create a project, you set a funding goal of how much money you need to do it, and then you give yourself an amount of time to raise it. So an example of this project, this is a band in the US that's looking to raise $4,000 to make a new EP. They need about $700 to reach their goal. If no one else were to support their project, no one would be charged and this project would not move forward. However, if they are able to, then credit cards are charged, they get their cash, and they go make their album. This project will be successfully funded. Every project that reaches 25% of its goal is almost always funded. It's about 90% of the time that happens. But this is the model on how Kickstarter works. The original, that went too fast. The original idea for Kickstarter came from my co-founder and our creator, Perry Chin, who's the guy in the middle here. The guy on the left is a co-founder, Charles Adler, and that's me on the right. But we're the three people who brought this idea to life. But Perry first had this idea in 2001, so 14 years ago, quite a long time ago. But the background of us is sort of unusual. None of us are technically skilled at all, or have any business background whatsoever. Charles is a graphic designer, Perry is an artist, and I was a music critic before Kickstarter. So we're people who weren't seeking to be entrepreneurs, that didn't desire to have a startup, but just had an idea that we cared a lot about. But it's taken a very long time to get started. This is the very first design of Kickstarter. This is from 2005. So 4 years before we launched, and this was done by Perry on his own. But you can see there's a big video window, there's a back this project button, there's a thermometer showing how much to reach a funding goal, there's a timer. But this was the very first sketch of what Kickstarter would look like. There's a lot of crowdfunding sites in the world that have all generally copied us, and they all, the original idea you can see started here. We started working on it so long ago that back in 2007, when we were trying to launch Kickstarter, we thought a lot about the Kickstarter MySpace widget. It was a very different internet then, but it was all about how are you going to get big on MySpace. So that's how old the idea is. But finally in 2009, the site launched, and this was the first project that was successfully funded. It's called Drawing for Dollars. And the idea was a guy said, if you give me $5, I'll draw you a picture of something. And he got 3 backers and $35, and that was the first project to ever be funded. But this was huge for us. Like, it actually worked. People used this. We got to see money transfer behind the scenes. It was a really important moment. And I still see in this what every project is, which is here's an idea of something I'd like to do, and it'd be a lot cooler to do it with you. So I think the core kernel of every Kickstarter project you see in this very small one. But it's grown considerably. Just earlier this week, a video game called Shenmue 3, which is a sequel to a very classic game, launched on Kickstarter and raised $2 million in 9 hours. So to go from $35 being a tremendous achievement to $2 million in 9 hours is a huge leap. And so the platform has grown considerably during that time with all sorts of really notable projects. So Cards Against Humanity, which some of you may know, a very popular card game. We have it here at our booth if you haven't seen it before. That started on Kickstarter. The Veronica Mars movie was a very big moment on the internet, a beloved and canceled television show brought back to life by its fans. This is a case where a movie studio had told the stars and creator of the show for 7 years, no, we're not going to allow you to make this anymore, no one cares. And they finally had the opportunity to propose the movie to the public, and within 2 hours had seen millions of dollars, $1 million get pledged to the project. Oculus Rift, there's a huge Oculus booth right over here. That started as a Kickstarter project. There's also been 6 films that were funded on Kickstarter that have been nominated for Academy Awards. One, Innocente, here won for Best Documentary Short 3 years ago. But this past year, a great film, Finding Vivian Maier, was nominated for Best Documentary. Great documentary, The Square, was nominated. But these projects that are starting through independent creators putting their ideas out into the world are being recognized by the most important institutions in the world. So you have Oscar nominations, you have multiple albums that have won Grammys, you have books that have been on the New York Times bestsellers list. More than 10% of the films that have premiered at the Sundance Film Festival over the past 5 years were funded on Kickstarter. 30% of the films that played at South by Southwest Film Festival this past year were funded on Kickstarter. There have been films opening at Cannes every year for the past 3 years that were funded on Kickstarter. So this is legit stuff. These are people, great artists, putting work into the world, and it's getting recognized. And it's getting recognized in a lot of different areas. This past year, the Museum of Modern Art in New York City put together a Kickstarter collection of things created through the site that they had for sale in the MoMA Design Store. And some of the greatest artists of the 20th century have been on Kickstarter. Neil Young did a project, Spike Lee did a project, Charlie Kaufman of Being John Malkovich adaptation did a project, Marina Abramovich, TLC, and yes, TLC is one of the most important artists of the 20th century. But these are all people who have done projects. De La Soul just did a Kickstarter for their first album in 10 years. And so you're seeing these really important people that I personally respect and admire, coming to Kickstarter because even they are challenged to connect directly with fans. Even they get screwed over by record labels and movie studios and the people who have the money who are trying to make them do things that they don't want to do or not giving them the artistic freedom and control that they deserve. But coming through Kickstarter, using a platform like ours, they're able to do that. So you have very respectable things on Kickstarter. You also have very unusual things, very unique things that just wouldn't happen any other way. A great example is a project that you can see right over here, Oval, which is a really cool new electronic instrument that's created. You could play with one over there, but this is a perfect example. There's also very unique things like a human-powered helicopter. There's an Afghani designer who created a landmine detonator that's just this beautiful object that rolls around the desert that's now a part of MoMA's permanent collection. You have people sending things into space. There have been dozens of projects of people sending things up into space. These are little satellites launched by one project. Right now there's a project alive called the Light Sail, which is to create something that Carl Sagan proposed 40 years ago, a different sort of spacecraft that would fly being powered by solar wind. This is about to raise $1 million through the site. So you're seeing just very creative, unique things, a lot of things that wouldn't happen any other way. And so this is our mission. Our mission is to help bring creative projects to life, and we want a very diverse set of ideas to happen. This is why we exist. And so we believe very deeply in this mission. We're very adamant about it, and we're very ideological as a company. And so I wanted to walk through, we have an internal mission and philosophy handbook that just lays out sort of our core principles. And this is something we've never shared publicly before, but I wanted to share with you guys today, just to give a sense of how we calibrate ourselves inside the company. So our handbook starts with this quote from Congresswoman Barbara Jordan: "The arts are not a thrill, the arts are a response to our individuality and our nature, and help to shape our identity." Especially in the US, there is a mentality that art and creativity is sort of a luxury. It's not something that's required as a part of society. We deeply disagree. We think this is integral to human nature and just so important to be recognized as something that has value on its own. And so as a platform, we're trying to expose people to the creative process, allow people a greater proximity to it. You know, you support Spike Lee's movie, not only do you get to see the movie, but you get to see how he makes it. And ultimately what we hope this does is it helps people unlearn that creating is too hard. It is something that is accessible to everybody. There's not a us and them of like artists who are special and unique and then everyone else who can't do that. We all possess that capacity. And our belief is that a lot of people talk themselves out of the things that they care so deeply about because it seems impractical or you're really hard on yourself, you don't have the confidence that you can go through with something. And we would like Kickstarter to be a way that people can get over those fears and just try to express their ideas, their creative ideas to the world. We're also very adamant that Kickstarter be its own unique thing. We don't want it to be everything to everyone. We don't want to be a generic, giant company that just means a lot of bullshit. We want to be very clear about what we stand for. We stand for art, creativity, opportunity, possibility, people coming together to make new creations happen. And so this means that we don't allow everything on Kickstarter. It's why we don't allow personal fundraising or charity. It's why we don't allow investment or real estate or many other things that would be highly lucrative through which we as a company could make much, much, much more money. But that is not our interest. Our interest is being very clear about exactly who we are. Another core part is that what we do reflects our values, not the standards that are set by others. So we especially see this in tech, that there is often a race to the bottom of people call it growth hacking or just doing things that are not in the best interest of the community or in the long term of a business, but people do because it's a shortcut to get bigger fast. But we want to avoid those things. We want to try to do things that we truly believe in. We want to do things that we can always feel comfortable being open about. You know, we believe in corporate transparency and personal privacy, and we want to have those right sorts of balances. And so we always want to be clear that the things we do are things that we actually believe. It's not just because it's something that the guy or girl next to us did. And finally, that we'll always remain independent and chart our own course. We've been a sustainable, profitable company for 5 years now, and in the world of tech, that is quite unusual. We have investors, a very small number of them from very early on in our business, and when we worked with them, we said to them that we will never try to go public as a company, and we will never sell the company to anyone else. Our sole desire is to be an independent, sustainable business as long as the world will allow us to be that. And that is it. Which is a quite unusual thing in this universe. And we're very fortunate to work with people who agreed with us and saw the merit of that and saw that the cause of creating a platform that could earn the public trust where anyone could put an idea up and make it happen was more important than whatever lucrative outcomes could be from selling the company or trying to go public. And so that ability for us to remain independent and make decisions according to our values, not be forced to make decisions because of money or because an investor tells us to or because a market tells us to, but just to remain true to the things that we believe. And this is just very core to who we are. And finally, our handbook closes with this line: we champion and celebrate the creation of art and culture, fuck the monoculture. And you know, this just means the boring monotony of Hollywood, of mass media, of a lot of just very popular forms of art, that we want to push against that. You know, what Kickstarter allows is a much greater diversity of things to happen that wouldn't have otherwise. And ultimately, it's producing a richer culture for all of us, and this is what we stand for. And you know, this is a fight that I think a lot of people in this room are about, and this is how we as an organization approach it. So that's what I wanted to start with, and now would be happy to take any questions or talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. So I think we have a microphone over here. If you'd like to ask something or say what's up, put up your hand.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for your explanations. I wanted to ask you, you said that you always want to be independent from other companies and you wouldn't allow a takeover or whatever, or merger. But have there been offers and from other industries, for example, from the finance sector or from, could you tell us a little bit about that?
I can't tell you much about them, but yeah, there have been.
So which sector, for example?
Well, those are, yeah, I won't go into any detail about it, but those are very easy things where you get the email of saying like, hey, we're interested in talking to you about this. Are you interested in, I mean, we just write back and say no. And just not even engage beyond that. But it's just, we don't believe it's in the long-term interest of the business. So the answer is just always no.
Okay, but which industries or which sectors do you think that you take away market share?
Well, I mean, I don't know that we are taking away market share from anyone, because I think that we're operating in places that existing businesses were not really in. You know, if you think about the big cultural producers, movie studios, record labels, for the most part, the projects you see on Kickstarter are things that they are not interested in because they are not going to be profitable for them. You know, as a movie studio, your job is to look at a potential film and say, how profitable could this be? Could this be a hit or not? Which sets a very high, kind of shitty bar for what someone can do. On Kickstarter, the bar is just, is this cool? Do I want this to happen? So the sorts of ideas we see are rarely lucrative ones. They're just ones that people are excited about. The world of finance, again, like the space for working, you know, the average Kickstarter project is raising about $10,000. If you're Goldman Sachs or, you know, a ginormous financial institution, that's not meaningful to you. That's not something that you care about. And even in the technology industry, when you think about film or music, everyone's focused on trying to sell the stuff after it was made. But we looked at that a lot differently and just thought, you know, all these people are trying to figure out how to make money selling things that already exist, but we know that the hard thing is just to make something that you feel proud of in the first place. So that's the challenge we want to think about, which we just didn't see anyone else doing. So I see it as having a purely additive effect on just the creative field and creative funding, and so we feel quite positive about that. There's a question up front here. I'm going to pass the microphone up. You got it.
How do you handle fraud? With increasing opportunities for everybody to just pitch their ideas,
right?
Are you not becoming more and more vulnerable to that kind of stuff?
No, I think I would say it's actually just the opposite. We're becoming a lot smarter about it. The way we deal with fraud, there's 3 different phases to it. First is that every project before it goes live is approved by Kickstarter. We don't do like deep background checks or like analyzing someone's schematics or anything like that. But we have a set of rules that shape the sorts of things that are allowed on the platform. And we also have a series of algorithmic checks that look for things that feel off. And so that's the first filter that happens. The next filter is that with the all or nothing funding model, no one gets any money unless they reach their funding goal. About 40% of projects do. But to the time while your project is live, for that month that it's out there, it's basically a public vetting process of the crowd deciding whether or not they want to support something. And what we've seen is that the crowd makes very good decisions. So there is a strong ability to suss out people who might be a little bit more bullshit than someone who's more prepared. And third, while a project is live, anyone can flag a project and report it to us for potential issues. And say for technical projects where will be very detailed, like here's a Raspberry Pi controller that does X, Y, Z things, there are people who are incredibly knowledgeable who will flag things to us that maybe wouldn't have noticed otherwise. And so if we ever find any sort of misrepresentation, we take a project down. So we have those filters that I think are incredibly powerful and limit the opportunity for the system to be abused. However, there's still always the opportunity of someone to raise the money and then not follow through on what they said they were going to do. And that could be for reasons of they got in over their head, you know, personal calamity took it off, or it's like they're a shitty person who tried to scam people. The latter is extremely, extremely rare. I mean, I know of maybe 3 or 4 times that like the law has stepped in the US for projects like that out of, you know, 200,000 projects, so it's quite rare. Someone flaking on a project, I think, is a more common sort of thing, and those, you know, in some cases, backers will be upset, and we'll try to work with them and the creator to figure out how do we make this project come to its conclusion. Other times, the backers might not actually mind that much if it's a small network of friends. It remains and always will be a challenging part of the platform. Because we are enabling people to create new things and to do very innovative, ambitious ideas, that means that this system will always have failure, always. There's no avoiding it. And so we view our job as to put those filters in place, like I mentioned, to be very open about the fact that this is how the system works, and not to insult people's intelligence by trying to pretend otherwise. But we think that even with all those things known, this is a great thing for people to participate in, and the vast majority of the time, it's going to work out great. So it's something we take very seriously, put a lot of time into, but I think that we have strong mechanisms that produce a good result, and then, you know, as we see more projects that get smarter and smarter, that will only improve. Our filters will get better, and I think there will be even less likelihood as time goes on. Thanks for asking that. Up front?
Hi, my name is Adriana from Connector Accelerator. So right now, it's like 2 questions. Right now, like being in Kickstarter is almost like a step that every startup has, like, you know, on their pitch. You know, they say, like, so we go to Kickstarter, we raise it, and it's also being used as like a marketing tool. How you recognize and see that happening? And the other question is, like, why it took so long for you to come to Spain?
Yeah. I'll start with the second one, I'll get to the first one. You know, we're quite deliberate as a company. You know, we don't move into things too quickly. And basically this year is the first time Kickstarter's ever been translated outside of English. So that was a quite extensive process, and then we had to make some other changes where we thought we could actually put a Spanish creator in a good position to succeed, where they could connect with American backers and reach outside of Spain and connect globally. So I apologize for how long it's taken, but we were just trying to do it right. People using Kickstarter for marketing, yeah, you know, there's really 3 big benefits you have to using Kickstarter. Number 1 is money. That's the most obvious one, but also I think it's maybe the least important one. Number 2 is community building. So you're putting an idea out in the world and allowing people to become directly a part of it from the very beginning. I think that is potentially the most valuable. And the third part is attention. You know, when you put a Kickstarter project up, it just becomes huge news on the web. It just gets a lot of traffic. They're like very sticky, gooey pages that people really like going to. You press the video, you know, it's just very clear. And so the question of, like, if you're asking, is it right for people to use it just for marketing? Yeah, I think in general, especially for people just starting out, we're okay with that. Like, you know, we would never want to be in a position where we want to check someone's bank account to make sure they need the money, because it isn't about that. You know, in the case of those bigger name artists, money is not the barrier for them to make something, but the barrier is about having community people that care about it, you know, having sort of permission to move forward with an idea. So it's not about money. But we do think about it differently if it's like a giant company. So some very big companies have approached us wanting to launch very popular, well-known products through Kickstarter as sort of a marketing gimmick of let's let the people be involved. And we always say no to those things. So yeah, but I mean, it's a legitimate benefit of the platform. And so we're not going to look at a project and judge, okay, of the 3 benefits, money, community, attention, like these have to be ranked in the right order for it to be okay. So, you know, we have a pretty open mind about that, with the exception of giant international corporations. Okay? Yes, sir?
Yeah. Yeah. First of all, apologies for my accent, and well, I'm a huge fan, so thanks for all. The question is, here in Spain, will you have some kind of headquarters or key alliance to assure you can boost Spanish projects? I'm pretty, I want to know that, if possible.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we're a company of 120 people, but we're all in New York City and Brooklyn. We don't have any offices outside of New York at this point. That's something that may change. Certainly we want to work with people, we want to work directly with Spanish creators as either people launching projects or as ambassadors with the platform. So we'll see how it evolves, but as of now, there are no plans to have an office outside of New York at this point, but we just travel a lot. What does ambassador mean? You know, this is sort of a new idea that we're working on, but just people that we have a slightly more formal relationship with who can represent Kickstarter in certain communities. A lot of people do this just because they like us, but we think about ways that we can acknowledge that on our side as well. Who else has a question?
Hey, so
Yeah.
first of all, thank you so much. There's so many wonderful things about Kickstarter. One of the shortcomings maybe is the long delay for projects to deliver on their goals, and I was just wondering if you're doing anything actively to combat that.
No, I would say that the amount of time it takes someone to fulfill, I don't see as much of an issue as maybe like being behind schedule. So I would view it as, say if a project if a film needs 2 years to happen because they need to spend a year in the Amazon shooting and then 6 months in an editing room, like I would never want to speed up that process, but I would want to help them set a reasonable, intelligent deadline at the start. So one thing I think that happens, especially for people who are entrepreneurial, is that you are extremely optimistic about your abilities to succeed. I mean, that first design of Kickstarter was in 2005, and we thought that we would launch like within a year, and it took us 4 years. So we know firsthand the clash between dreams and reality. And so I do think there's that part of human nature that we often overestimate ourselves and underestimate the challenges that we will face. So I think the best thing that we can do is try to educate creators about that. Just, there's going to be some hard parts of this. Don't put a date that's super aggressive to try to get more money, because you're going to pay a cost for that and credibility in the long run. I think these things just take as long as they take. I think when a project has delays, it's not because someone isn't working on it. It's just that they hit some roadblocks. So I think we could do a better job as a platform of educating people about the right way to think about that. Yes?
Okay, so I'm curious what happened between 2005 and 2010. How did you manage to scale your business to obtain growth?
Yeah, the question was what happened between 2005, that first design, and 2009 when we launched. The answer is a lot of pain. My partners Perry and Charles were both full-time for 3 years trying to make the project happen. We raised money from our friends. Pretty much everyone who's an early investor in Kickstarter is an artist. And we raised money from them to hire external developers to build the platform for us, but it went terribly. Spent like 2 years on that, spent all of our money, and got nothing out of it. And so there was a point in late 2007, early 2008, where it seemed quite probable that it would not be able to happen, just so many obstacles. And then we managed to connect with a couple of very good people. And one engineer in particular, who's still our chief architect, a guy named Lance Ivey, who were able to build a platform. So we went from for Perry, 8 years of having the idea, for us 3 years of trying to build it, and then suddenly we found the right team, and it was 4 months till the site was live at that point. But it was just very, very difficult. It just took quite a long time.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yes, my name is Carmen. I do research on innovation, and I'm interested in the co-creation part of your activity. What do you have an estimate of what percentage of the projects are from people who did it more than once, tried and then failed and then tried again? And how do you assess that learning?
Yeah, I don't have the numbers on the top of my head, but we have researched this. It's quite common. I'm going to guess that maybe 15% of projects are people coming back again. What we find actually is that if someone's first project was successful, their successive projects have increasingly high success rates. To where, like, if your first 2 projects are successful, your third is like 80% chance or something, based on what we've seen historically. And then we do have a lot of people also whose first project was unsuccessful, then they learn and tweak and come back and do it again. And absolutely, you'll see that work. I mean, the most dramatic case is a project, it was the most funded project last year, I think called The Coolest Cooler, but it raised $14 million. That guy had launched the project, same project 7 months before, and had failed to raise $100,000. But the platform had grown, he learned about how to present this project, and suddenly walked away with, you know, what is the second most successful crowdfunding campaign in history. So there's absolutely opportunities to revise and improve.
Hi, I'm Jazz Choi from the Urban Informatics Research Lab in Australia. I was wondering, I'd love to hear your thoughts about social entrepreneurship and whether Kickstarter has any particular strategies around that at all.
What do you mean by social entrepreneurship?
So entrepreneurship with mainly social purposes to actually bring good, do well type of thing.
I mean, I absolutely think that Kickstarter is in that same spirit and that same space, but we actually have always rejected the notion of ascribing too much to that as a way that Kickstarter is framed. I mean, there's a reason why Kickstarter is not a non-profit, and that it seems to limit the mission or the way that people interpret the impact. We don't think that, like, we want people to be able to make art or do creative things for reasons of just inspiration or frivolity, or because they want to do good in the world, but we don't feel like that prism is needed for Kickstarter to be successful. So, I mean, I think the fact that I see a lot of, you know, younger entrepreneurs who are driven to create a business built around positively shaping the world, and I think that's wonderful. I'll take that over, you know, another messaging app 100 times a day. But for us, we've always tried to distance ourselves a bit from it, just because we don't like the idea that art gets put into like this do good, feel good about yourself category. We think it has the right to just stand on its own as just valuable without needing any other justification. So that's just been our own internal mentality when thinking about that. Anyone else? Are we done? Oh, in the back, some very fervent hand waving. All the way back there.
Hi, it's very, very exciting to hear behind the scenes. I'm also a very avid Kickstarter backer of many projects. Hearing you talk, I realized that really the focus and framing of the platform for supporting creative artists' works and so forth, I think it's perfectly, so the kind of expectation from the backer side, when it's about film or music project, it's perfect. I realized I still have a bunch of product type things that I backed many years ago that still seem to, so they're still hanging somewhere. I don't have any problem with that. But I know the contract that I step into at the beginning. But I guess that's for many people hard to understand the sort of, when you are kind of buying a utilitarian product that looks cool but it's not there yet. How do you balance this sort of a trade-off or the kind of a gap between things that become more marketing before the products are ready, and then of course the challenge of making the production from the first prototype.
Right.
I totally understand that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that there are very different mentalities for backers when supporting a film or an album than a product. With a product, you're more excited about the thing. I think there's a greater expectation for the thing. We made a very loud statement to try to address this about 3 years ago. We made a big announcement called Kickstarter is not a store, where we added additional rules for people making product-related things that basically boiled down to you had to have at least made a physical prototype of your thing before it can be on Kickstarter. You can't show photorealistic renderings of your thing and pretending that it exists when it doesn't yet. And you have to talk about the risks and challenges that could prevent you from completing your project. And so made that a required part of the page. And so that actually dramatically changed the sorts of projects that could be on the platform because it meant you had to be further along. I don't think that totally solves this issue, but that was our first step of trying to address the exact sort of difference you're talking about. But this is why we will constantly use phrases like Kickstarter's not a store to try to underline that fact. It's why we don't call projects pre-orders. It's why we say back this project. We want to be very clear about that line because we think that if you cross that line, it can be very damaging to a consumer, to a backer, which would be terrible for the platform and I think would ultimately not be fair. So we try to be very clear about that. And I still think there is much, much farther for us to go. But I'm with you. I'm with you. Next to you.
Thank you. Yeah, hi. Do you think companies like Kickstarter could be the solution for the crisis that the music industry and the movies industry is in at the moment?
I think certainly we could be a big part of it. I look at especially the film industry, and it's just grown increasingly conservative with just like sequels of already shitty movies. And the notion of how you make something that's more imaginative or creative is quite difficult. But this is where Kickstarter allows all of us, the public that actually cares about art and the things and culture, that gives us a say. So I think it could go quite far. But I think in general, things are trending in a positive direction. I mean, there's a lot more money, I think, coming into creative fields than there was in the past. A lot of it is corporate money. Every tech company now wants to make their own TV shows like Netflix or whatever, or, Mountain Dew funds like every album that gets made at this point. And, I don't have great feelings about those things, but it is enabling people to create work. And hopefully just more money continues to come into the creative community. I mean, at this point, Kickstarter certainly is among the biggest, maybe the biggest sorts of arts funding in the world. I mean, it's up there. We would love to be like the millionth biggest, and just all artists and creators are swimming in opportunity. And hopefully we can take us on that trajectory. That's our hope. I think I'm out of time. Thank you guys for listening and asking questions. And we have a booth over there. A number of great members of the Kickstarter team will be hanging out there. I will too. Come say hi, play with some stuff. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
So thank